Hello everybody, welcome. Deep appreciation for all of you who listen, like, share, the very few people, perhaps 3, 4, who support or have supported my channel directly with donations. Super appreciate you, particularly Mr. C. Love you, man, you're amazing. You've made such a huge difference in my life and work. I think you have no idea how profound your friendship and support has been. So yeah, very cold night. Not so bad now, though I'm pretty bundled up. I have many things on my mind. I'm not really sure where I'm going to go today. But strap in and we'll all find out, including me. Also, incredible gratitude and reverence to the living places, the indigenous peoples, the ancient peoples, the animal, plant, insect, skyworld peoples, the bird peoples, the water peoples, who I am absolutely, and have been my entire life, completely enchanted by. The whales, the dolphins, the shrimp, the corals, the plankton, the diatoms, the octopi and cuttlefish and squid. I don't think the humans generally have any fucking idea how those beings synergize to produce the possibility of the minds with which we dismiss and obliterate them as a species. Pure adoration in my heart for the living beings and places and the traditions. It is impossible to explain the incredible intelligence, insight, heartfulness of my dear friend Ryan First Diver. Encourage you to check out his channel. What an astonishing mind, and what a privilege and precious pleasure to have been able to learn with him about Blackfoot tradition, language, ontology, semantics, world view, and the incredibly strange and very difficult to understand, what should we call these? I think the simplest term is just the stories. And also their songs, which are powerful beyond anything I've ordinarily encountered. Yeah, Ryan, my heart is with you, man. Always. So, yeah, so much gratitude and reverence and love. All right, so what are we up to today? Let me think here. I was just listening to Jesse Michaels interviewing Joe Rogan. Both have made astonishing contributions to the world, our minds, our capacities to see. One of the topics I want to talk about is, when you hear Rogan or Michaels, particularly in this podcast, talking about the things that fascinate them, you'll commonly hear, particularly Rogan, he likes to use this word bonkers, meaning this is insane, or even this doesn't make sense. And something really important about this, because one of the things that I think every time I hear him or one of his guests talk about things that are bananas, this is bananas, right? Which, what does that mean? It's a yellow fruit. But I know what they mean. They mean it's crazy. And here's the actual, in my view, situation. We have been scripted to defame, denigrate, evict, obliterate, wipe from history, wipe from literature, wipe from the face of the earth, anything that conflicted with the dominant, thrisp-generated ontologies, epistemologies, methods, worldviews that are primarily the spawn of disoriented, relationally and intelligently dead inside, like the skeletal remains of what could have been insight. And there's a very profound way in which the entire field of what we call knowledge is like these remains. Now, knowledge is a topology. There are mountaintops that are astonishing and valuable, so to speak. A topology, so to speak. Mountaintops, so to speak. But the valleys are pervasive, deadly, lethal, right? You don't have to die to go to hell. You just have to be scripted with modern ontologies, and most of what is true and interesting and beautiful and accessible to you will be gone. Right? The defense of structured, dogmatic narratives, explanations, proclamations about identity, function, character, quality, proclamations about limitation. Right? These are... I'm having a sort of a deja vu moment here. Yeah, I was onto something, but it's very slippery. These are living death for the mind. And these ridiculous decisions about what is crazy, what's not possible, what cannot be true. These are what are actually bananas. This is what is actually bonkers. That we could possibly become so surgically removed from our nature, our origin, our senses, our intelligences, and our access to the vast living library of intelligences that generate our minds moment to moment. That's what's fucking bonkers. Not that ancient peoples had methods we don't understand. Not that people have had NDE experiences of mind sharing, i.e. telepathy. Not that people have seen UFOs or that we have bodies. I don't know who we is. We don't have. I mean, we have our bodies. And very likely, those bodies did not evolve by, quote, pure evolution, unquote. So what is actually fucking bonkers, and I'd love to hear anyone else say this, what is actually like, what? To use Amon Hillman's inflection, is the lying, the desperate, militarized lying of the bullshit ontologies we live in that literally defend themselves at any and all costs from being dethroned. And the expert on this topic, there are a few, but the main one is Iain McGilchrist in his book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Mind and the Making of the Western World, in which he effectively frames a kind of a narrative that I was deeply aware of before he wrote this book. I'm so grateful to him for writing it because it saved me from having to. So this is a kind of Cain and Abel narrative where the true, or another similar narrative or similar story that I think is crucially important is the man in the iron mask, right? Where there's these twin brothers, and the true king is in an iron mask in a dungeon in the castle where his lethally disoriented brother is ruling over the land and the people egregiously and viciously and selfishly and arrogantly. There's a Musketeers film around this that's quite good. I think Leonardo DiCaprio plays both the villain and the masked king, where they attempt to swap him back into sovereignty. And so McGilchrist, like my own, everything that I was taught by Toymaker, the NHI complex, who was my teacher for 9 months in 2002, I can hear people going, what? That's crazy. No, that's not as crazy as all the things you are incapable of entertaining in your mind because you were told they're crazy. That's the actual fucking problem. And what is telling you, that's bullshit. That thing that's telling you that's bullshit is the bullshit, right? That is the bullshit, right there. We live on a world where the humans have become so scripted by structured deformations of the network of human minds that are transmitted generation to generation, mutated, undergo gain-of-function research naturally, because they can evolve incredibly quickly. No one can see them, right? You don't see thrisps. You are blinded because of thrisps, right? So the one thing thrisps really don't want you to see is anything that reveals their existence or their... I'm not saying they explicitly exist the way a stone does. They exist in the same way minds exist, right? And one of the biggest lies we've ever been told is that minds are separate. Yeah, it's in a box in your head, brah. Yeah, it's your brain. Yeah, it's separate from all the other minds. There's no chance of that even being possible. So the actual bullshit is the stuff that the skeptics and, the Four Horsemen and the Richard Dawkinses and Christopher Hitchenses and Sam Harrises and so forth, all very brilliant minds, by the way. Highly intelligent persons, to be sure. I can't remember the fourth horseman. Who was it? That's okay. But yeah, these are the Thrisp warriors, right? These are the UFC of Thrisps, So just to be clear, what Thrisps are is they are highly structured defects in the network of human minds. They are essentially ideas, and they gain physical expression through humans. It's not clear to me that Thrisps exist in the other cognitia. There are something like proto-Thrisps in various life forms I have observed, particularly colony life forms. Had to save a little earthworm there. It's like a baby. Yeah, there are Thrisp-like proto-Thrisps, right? But in humans, this is the only thing around here that I'm aware of that is subject to, dominated by, colonized by, and colonizes nature for Thrisps. Excellent examples of these aren't humans, but they're pretending to be, are things like Google, Facebook, X, Instagram, Pinterest. AI is basically like thrisps on, quantum steroids or something. Cars, right? You want to think about dead structure that replaces living lineages, minds, and histories, and captures humans to reproduce it. So you can see thrisp-like things that humans make. I'm looking at a bunch of them right now. But the human cognitium is infested with these dead structured processes, and there's nothing as aggressive or domineering as that anywhere in nature that I'm aware of. I believe that they are the result of the loss of a mediating influence that basically acted as an immune system against them for much, if not most, of human history, and still does so in many indigenous cultures, but not all. You can find indigenous cultures that demonstrate a very thrisp-dominated ontology. Now, it could be that they're hiding things, right? They're hiding what is pure and good and true about them and only showing to anthropologists and researchers and visitors and so forth superficial features of their culture. But you can see evidence of thrisp-like capture in many indigenous cultures. I'm thinking of one particularly where I saw some interviews with a guy who spent time with them. They are primate hunters in somewhere in Africa, I believe. And they seemed, how to put it, they seemed incredibly shallow in terms of what mattered, right? They were highly focused on getting meat to such a degree that I was like, this might be an indigenous population that's been captured by thrisps. Now, I invented this word. This is a neologism. Prior to that, we had things like memes. Richard Dawkins himself introduced, and he probably wasn't the first one by a long shot. I'm sure ancient peoples were aware of this danger, even, I don't know what their language for it was. But Dawkins introduced the concept of sort of mind viruses, right? And so some people have said, you're just recycling Dawkins. Okay, yeah, but I'm not. Because what I'm trying to say is there is an environment, the human cognitium, which floats on the cognitia and is interactive with the other cognitia of living beings on Earth and the sky, and things we don't even have language for. The human cognitium is like a world. And in that world, you don't get viruses if there's no organisms. So in that world, there might be a sort of particulate, virus-like aspect of thrisps, but what I'm thinking about are organisms and extended colonies of similar organisms that function synergistically to advance their motivations. Anyway, this talk isn't about thrisps. This talk is more about, all of the humans who think they know what can't or doesn't exist. Okay, let's just be absolutely simple about this. Human knowledge has a grasp on less than 1% of what's going on. And there doesn't seem to be any piece of human knowledge that I'm aware of. I guess there might be an exception in specific Enlightenment traditions or spiritual traditions that knows what anything is at all. Right? All we have are a bunch of tokens that we use to point at stuff. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. We don't know why it is there. And you can say, like, it evolved on Earth. That doesn't help you. That's just a change of venue. Why the fuck are there worlds? Why are there stars? Right? And there's no explanation for origin. If you don't have a grasp on origin, your entire ontology is based on nothing. Right? It's just based on conceptual synonymy between a token and its referent. That is not knowledge. That is not insight. That is not intelligence. That is a game that pretends to sovereignty over human minds and civilizations, cultures, societies, and dominates and is threatening and rejects anything that could possibly interfere with its sovereignty over human minds, intelligence, creativity, experience, efflorescence, development, all of these aspects of our being. So thrisps are a toy, right? They are a playful figuration, a prosthesis, a lens. The cognitium, which is the network of human minds that I envision as a world as real as ours but invisible to us, with which we see, right? Our minds are features of the cognitium. They're not separate in our heads. They were never separate. It's impossible to separate a mind from other minds. There's no such thing. What you can do is impose barriers in thought and expectation and the pursuit of possibility. You can do that. It's very easy to do that in humans because we have this aspect, like the fingernail on the end of one of your fingers that wants to dominate the entire body, and any threat to its sovereignty will be, should be punished by death. And these structures evict from our experience, right? They literally limit what we can experience, because anything that violates the expectation space, engineered by these structures, is rejected by consciousness, right? It's a very efficient system. So what I'm trying to say is there's nothing as weird, there's nothing as crazy as the bullshit ontologies that call anything that questions their sovereignty over identity and existence, that denigrate and put to the torch and kill that stuff. There's nothing as crazy as that, right? Nothing is more bananas than that. How do you capture an entire species this way? That's fucking bananas, right? And Joe doesn't seem to yet be aware of this, though he may be on the cusp, Joe Rogan. He may be on the cusp of such an awareness. Obviously, he chases topics that orbit these areas, but he still thinks they're nuts. What does he mean by nuts? Right? I mean, does he mean cashews or peanuts? What does he mean by bananas? Right? He certainly doesn't mean the fruit. So what is he saying? What he's really saying is the entrenched bullshit systems that have dominated my mind, thought, and expectation throughout my life are being called into question. That's the bananas thing, right there. The existence of those systems in the first place. The thing that tells you, no, that's too weird to imagine. That thing is the fucking monster in every closet, in every mind on Earth. We know nearly nothing about existence or reality. The conceptual linguistic mind is immune, right? It has militarized systems of rejection for anything that calls its functions, features, anatomy, and infrastructure into question. So that's what I think is bananas. Someone asked me, like, what's my political party? And I was like, I don't have a political party. My mind is to political parties as UFOs are to silverware. Because they had characterized me to their friend as a liberal, right? I guess a liberal is just anyone who doesn't agree with your insane bullshit sovereignty over you know what should be happening in American politics. Wow. That's fucking bananas. Right? And I said to my friend, I think it's disingenuous of you. When somebody calls me a liberal, it's like calling me a shithead or, a thief or a murderer. It's calling me a name, especially if they don't know me, or especially if they're characterizing me to someone they know who they intend to introduce me to. That's defaming, right? Why would someone who appreciates my intelligence want to peg me as a bad thing to their friends, many of whom are incapable of forging a single intelligent thought? Now I'm defaming them. Excuse me. Sorry for the loud noise in the mic. Throat's still a little bit froggy. So yeah, the actual bullshit isn't the bullshit, it's the thing that's calling bullshit most of the time. Yes, there are exceptions, right? We do need to adjudicate truth claims. But there are many different forms of truth, and many of them have nothing to do with, does this match your ordinary experience and expectation space or not, right? There's a sort of thing where the madness of crowds, right? The inveterate ignorance that has been foisted on us under the flag of learning, the academy, knowledge, that system of, it has, that infrastructure has features that are reliable. I wouldn't dismiss it entirely. But to project that reliability over all phenomena and say something like, this can't be true, about something that is obviously going on, right? That is accessible to human experience, understanding, awareness, speculation, so forth. That's ridiculous. I mean, how did this get started? I know a lot about how this got started. A lot of it has to do with departure of the aspects of our humanity that provided immunity from thrips and from capture of the cognition. But this isn't the story I'm here to tell today. That's a very complex, long history of sort of waterfalls that we fell down and are still racing down today. And much of it has to do with the development of science and technology, war, prisons, hierarchical systems of domination and authority within the human cognition that are the war machines of thrips. There are positive thrips, too. They're not just negative. But the cold, hard structured stuff, a lot of that is lethal to both the network of human minds and living beings themselves, because humans enact those priorities. So that's the first part of my talk. Most of the bullshit is the thing that's calling bullshit on stuff that is absolutely veritable and part of our human experience. Wow, somebody's listening to a phone call in their car at unimaginable volume. So what I was going to say is, certainly people have come to me and told me stories about their experiences where I realized, I think this is more psychological than cognitive, or I think this narrative doesn't hold water very well. But when I'm making those evaluations, I'm not just listening to what they're saying and deciding it's impossible. I'm watching the person. I'm watching their body language, their vocal tone, their facial expressions. I'm listening to their prosody, the tempo, the music of their speech, right? I'm attending not consciously, because that would be impossible. See, this is the thing. The thing with which we think is insufficient to do thinking. But it projects itself as the natural and authoritative sovereign over all mental experience, insight, discovery, revelation, intelligence, and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is there is a branch of human communications behavior that is reasonable to have some suspicion about and to treat more, somewhat analytically, to make a determination of, what kind of, what kind? I mean, that word kind is very closely related to kin. Is this part of my family or not? Which is a fundamental, deep, primitive within human interiority. What I'm trying to say is that we don't want to get rid of entirely our capacity to evaluate reports, allegations, testimony. Yeah. But we need to be very cautious about when those faculties and abilities escape their natural scope of reasonable application and attempt to pervade over all, existence, right? Like by saying there's nothing in the universe like that. You've got a grasp on like 0.0000001%, or probably vastly less, of what's going on. So anyone who wants to claim authoritatively that telepathy doesn't exist is full of shit. And by the way, I finally learned where we got this idea by hanging out with some old Tai Chi guys and doing Tui Shao or pushing hands with them. And I discovered that I could sense when their intestines were full, right? When their colon was full, because they were slower, less sensitive, less aware, more inclined to use force, less flexible, less playful, less resilient. And I myself realized that I too am this way, right? When there's a bunch of crap that hasn't been evacuated in me, that there's a burden to carry that stuff around. So this full of shit aphorism actually has an important physical, biological, energetic, spiritual meaning. It's not just random, it's not an arbitrary colloquialism, which I found surprising. I wasn't ready for that. I thought this is just a traditional way of saying that person's not being credible, or not being intelligent, or making, quote, making stuff up, unquote. But what we don't realize about making stuff up is the stuff that we use to accuse others of making stuff up is itself made up, right? Like, it's just your imagination. Really? Would it be true that you're imagining that it's my imagination? Because if it's just my imagination, don't you have to imagine that it's just my imagination before you can even conceive of promoting that assertion, right? So this is the thing. If you look carefully at the structure of human minds and cognition, conceptualization, validation, and refutation, right, then you'll see that the faculties that are involved are often precisely the faculties that are being denigrated by the mouth noises of the broken monkey stomping around as though it knows what is true and not. It is impossible to know what is true and not, unless the scope is very limited, right? Is it true that I am not holding a fork in my hand? Okay, that's a very limited scope, right? So it's not hard to assert, how to put this, profoundly authoritatively that at this moment, my hand does not have a fork. I'm not holding a fork. the primary problem is that when we transfer, we displace that kind of certainty onto phenomena that it is impossible to have that kind of certainty about, single-valued thinking, which definitely includes personal identity. You know, someone's like, "You're a liberal." I'm like, "Really? Well, at 5 o'clock on, tomorrow, I'm going to be eating food. Am I a liberal then? Am I a liberal when I'm not thinking thoughts about being a liberal? What makes me a liberal?" Right? See how single-valued that is? So yeah, there's all of these problems in language and cognition, conceptualization, assertion, refutation, objection, agreement, that underlie very everyday common features of human cognitive and conceptual, linguistic, semantic, and evaluative identity. The best word is really just evaluation, if we want to make a single-valued derivative. Now there's something else, right? Humans seem to think technology and advancement are synonymous. That is nonsense. Technology as we experience it is mostly lethal and unnecessary. If we were being human together and exploring our natures and faculties and abilities in nature, right, we would discover that we neither want, like, nor need machines. So machines are really more of an outcome of thrips. And I was listening to Rogan talking with Michaels, and he was talking about the Sumerian king records and how it was clear that there were some kings who were claimed to have lived, it was claimed that they lived for 40,000 years. And then Rogan went on a technological, he's like, we got these bariatric chambers, we can lengthen telomeres, and doesn't seem to realize that lengthening telomeres doesn't make you younger, it propagates cancer. You should talk to Brett Weinstein about this. It has both effects, right? You either get shortening telomeres or you become a cancer factory. Telomeres are a protection against cancer, which is basically the biological equivalent of crisps in a number of ways. These things are metaphorically very similar. And you can see that the human relationship with technology is very similar. So Rogan thought, maybe they had advanced technologies way back then. No, maybe without technology, in a different phase of Earth's life phases, humans or hybrid humans naturally didn't die after a short lifespan. Very few people have considered that it's not merely possible but likely. See, this is the problem with the idea of human. We think that human means the same thing it did 10 years ago today, and it doesn't. In fact, it is impossible for it to do so. Are there some features of our familiar characteristics that have been conserved? Absolutely. Are there other features that have not been conserved? Absolutely. Are there new features and problems and diseases, disabilities, and so forth that have been introduced? Absolutely, right? So, my friends and I were talking last night. They were complaining about the difficulty of finding They were complaining about the difficulty of finding partners, relational, romantic partners. And particularly complaining about the quality of the partners in their recent experience. And I was like, did it ever occur to you that things have changed over the past 10 years? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you meet people? They're like, well, through apps and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? You want a machine involved in your mating behavior? What did it ever occur to you, for example, that nearly all of the people who are on social media, let's just say a large percentage of them, they don't have lives. Right? If you are living with other people and beings, why would you defect into machines? And why, what has happened to humans that we're now being connected through apps? Does that change what it means to be human? You better fucking believe it does. So I explained to them that what you want to do is meet humans organically, right? Do your mating behaviors, your bonding behaviors organically. And they're like, well, how are we going to do that? Just walk down the street and meet people? And it's like, no, go to functions where people are doing something together, becoming something together, learning something together, playing at something together, creating together, partying together, right? And find your partners that way. Yeah? And they found this to be a shocking revelation. They're like, oh my God, this never occurred to me. I was like, think about, you're claiming that the mating environment has collapsed and there's no good, people of gender X or Y, whatever, for you to meet. And you keep meeting people who have like really serious problems. But have you looked at how were you introduced? Don't we think that matters? Like, for the entire history of life on Earth, beings mated and met and bonded and fell in love pretty organically, right? Until maybe the past, 1,500 years, and much less so over the past 500, 100, 50, 10, whatever. It's a cascade problem. This is what I mean. Our species and most of our common experience is collapsing where it's not protected from collapse by intimacy, communal concern and awareness. So, Joe was like, I think they had technology. What if they had the opposite of technology, right? Just before Joe was saying this, Jesse was advertising for one of his sponsors and said that the most advanced thing you will ever encounter is your body. Guess Joe didn't hear the ad. Is the hawk emphasizing my assertion? Oh, there she is. How powerful, beautiful, profound. I suspect it's a female, but I'm not sure. But $33, I think. Count them yourself. Maybe she's criticizing me, I'm not sure. Because I'm dissociated. I'm with a machine. I'm in a process. I'm not paying attention. Attention is the most valuable. Human attention has become fracked, right? We're being fracked directly. But it's the most valuable resource you have as a living being. And in nature, defection from attention to the physical place you are now and your history with that place and the beings of that place and the origins of that place and the future of that place, defection from that is punishable by death. That's nature's court, right? And it's not a court of laws. There are no lawyers. It's a court of relational intimacy and integrity, right? Defection there gets you eaten. But humans are protected from most of that by machines. And the cost of that is endlessly bad. So yeah, I think it was weird to hear Joe saying that he thought they had technologies. Now, if he means techne in the sense of methods, that might be true, but I don't know. There may have been mechanical technological cultures. I'm not sure there wasn't. But I'm also very much and profoundly aware, the same way I'm aware that water is wet, that there are features of our nature and ability that have nothing to do with machines that surpass them. And machines are a subtractive hypostasis of these features. The more we use and are in relation with machines, the more these features and what subserves them die out in us. So this is my bird walk for today. I think this is a reasonable place to wrap up. I'm so grateful for all of you who listen and participate, think, ask a question, share your own insight or experience. I'll respond to every comment that I can find. It's not entirely clear to me that some feature of the situation is removing comments. I look at my held comments and there are none. So I don't know the flapping slot is going on with that. But yeah, take a moment. Share, like, subscribe, ask a question, leave a criticism, share your own insights or experience. Be very grateful for that. I wish you beauty, liberation, wonder, playful creativity, love, amazing dreaming, and the fulfillment of the promise of your human incarnation this time around. Even though it's not exactly yours. This I, me, mine thing is another one of the... It's not like there's nothing like that, but its pervasiveness is malfounded. Unity pervades. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again very soon. Peace for now.